Okay, so apparently we're live. Hopefully it'll start going through and then people can join. So
What's up, everybody?
Shitcoin Church episode 24.
Here, let me go
Finally
share
managed
this.
to get hold of Circa, also known as the Toast.
What's up,
Um,
y'all?
welcome, dude.
Thank you so much, sir. Here, I'm trying to go find the link right now so I can share it around.
Just I think if you look at Blockmate's main account on Twitter, it basically broadcasts it there. So you
I
can just go
gotcha.
there.
Dude, welcome back from the desert.
Yeah, thanks, man. It was nice to get away and play some music and just not be online, dude. You know what a freaking amazing thing it is to just like have your phone in your hand and like literally throw it in the back of your tent and say, okay, well that's it for like 9 days, and not go anywhere near an internet connection because there isn't one. And
Yeah, I've definitely been unplugged from like crypto in general.
so
Or rather,
what have you been up to? Because I know that you're normally very active in the pit and
yeah.
you've always got involvement in stuff. And I mean, in many ways, it could be construed that you are quite frantic on Discord, but you've just been very quiet. Like, it was literally a case of me having to drag you by the ankles outside the door to get you online today. So, what you been up to?
Yeah, I've been learning programming and application development over the last like 3 weeks. I went from knowing nothing about any of that to I'm currently coding my own application. It's pretty intense. And I did it all by just talking to a large language model, ChatGPT specifically, and Claude, which is super cool. Like you can really bootstrap a lot of skills really quickly by being unafraid to have like prolonged conversations with an AI. And asking a lot of questions. So that's what I've been up to. And it's kept me occupied while we've been downtrending. And I haven't really cared much, which has actually kept me from making a lot of stupid decisions because I'm so busy, like focused on this task. And I've been able to like TradingView. I don't think I've taken it off daily for like 3 or 4 weeks. So by default, if I go to check TradingView, it's on daily. And I'm just waiting for a daily market structure break on BTC to actually like not necessarily go back into full frantic mode. I'm going to keep coding, but just to say, okay, well, maybe we're recovering and we're about to take off now. And BTC yesterday finally broke the daily downtrend and is now officially uptrending. So I think as obese crypto lad said in the Discord, the over is overing and we're back to backing.
Yeah, it seems like the catalysts around this whole thing, and I completely and utterly blame Kobe for kicking off like the sentiment that it's maybe over. I mean, even though he was quite careful in the way that he worded it, it was
What did he say?
he pretty much said like it might be over, like this is it. And then obviously the duck came out yesterday and he was like, well, the day before yesterday, and he was like, okay, well, looks like it's over, tops in, and then proceeded
He
to
said
post
that yesterday?
day before yesterday, and then yesterday he came out and said it's memes are gonna rug, it's done. And it's like,
so here's the thing is that he's a brilliant trader
brilliant,
and
like brilliant. Yes.
can't throw any shade on the man. You have to put
Yeah.
respect on the man's name.
Yeah.
And so it took me a while to like realize like, oh, this guy's actually brilliant. Like he's really good trader. But I realized that. But I also have been careful to notice like how have his calls on, say, Solana played out. Initially bullish on Solana at the lows around $10 to $20, but then stopped being bullish around $80. But was wrong. He was wrong twice about Solana. The last 2 major calls about Solana. He said ETH would outperform Solana when it did its consolidation at like around 100. And he said ETH would outperform Solana like time since then. So he's been wrong there. And he's been wrong about memes. And I think it's just a consequence of that's not the type of trader he is. The type of trader he is he's looking for very easy, low stress, high time frame opportunities on big majors. And when Donald talks about alts, he literally will start, he like alts, like we'll look at XRP, we'll look at Link,
Litecoin.
he did like, he wouldn't even be able to tell you what the alts everyone's excited about are. And so I think he just doesn't have the context for that world, because he does, that's not where he makes his money. It's not in like the trenches of like deep bullshit. It's like majors on obvious plays on high time frames. So I wouldn't expect him to really have great calls on memes or, you know, the newest alts. So yeah, I can't fault him for that. Maybe he's right. Maybe memes are cooked. But every time that someone has stood up to say that the memes are over this cycle, they've been wrong, and they're using knowledge that in previous cycles they would have been right.
Yes.
So it's kind of different, you know. Memes haven't run this hard, this wide in any previous cycle.
And they've also been kind of like indicators to either the start or the end of certain narratives. And here we've had a consistent hum and almost beating of the drum in the background. And one could argue
still haven't
that
had the moment, like if you remember last cycle, the guy with the chart of all the dogs.
Yes.
And he was investing in dogs. And then SHIB went to Deca billions and Doge almost hit $1. That moment hasn't happened yet. You know, like the new memes and the incumbents running like really crazy. It hasn't really happened yet, because Bonk is still in like single digit billions. You know, Whiff is still in single digit billions. So until you see these new memes like gain another zero on market cap, I think that moment in the cycle hasn't happened yet. We're not guaranteed to get it, but to say that like the memes are cooked because they've done what they've done in previous cycles, it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah. So I think from just coming back to what kind of like Don's perspective is, and I found this quite surprising with a lot of like the OGs, like a lot of the brilliant traders, and you're right, he's really good, and he's always been like this insane indicator and voice, especially around Bitcoin and also Ethereum, because those are his two specialist trades, and the guy just knows what the fuck he's talking about. But what I find equally surprised, well, as brilliant as he is, I find it really surprising that there's this oncoming fucking steam train, and it's essentially twice as big as Snowpiercer, and it's moving at fucking the light speed, and it's a monster, and you're not seeing it coming at you. And this is what surprises me, is that how can you not be aware of probably the single most important narrative that we've ever had in this market? It showed it reared its head during the bear market. It told us people really like this. People like the gambling aspect. They like the simplicity, and they like.
You mean like the rollbit season type shit?
Yeah, all of that shit, dude. But even
and
like
then
when we
memes
had
as a
that
continuation of that narrative.
Yes,
Yeah.
correct. And then not actually like dialing into it and actually like understanding, like obviously there's a whole lot of disadvantages to this thing, but then what are the advantages? And then also just realizing like this thing ain't gonna stop. And we've got probably 100 examples of why it ain't gonna stop. And I'm just surprised that hasn't been noted by someone like him.
I think that the OGs are picking up on, and you've heard them mention it, and GCR even mentioned it in 2022, which is it's going to take some years for people to be as uncynical about crypto as they have been, because this was a huge blow. FTX was a huge blow to the respectability and the seriousness of of crypto as an opportunity and as a future technology. And it's going to take a while. And I think what they're picking up on is that the cynicism around crypto has never been higher. Most market participants are of the opinion that all of this shit is dog shit trash. And with memes, at least, you know, it's dog shit trash. And you have no bones about it being a complete like gamble. It's literally a game of chance. And you're playing it that way. Whereas in last cycle, if you remember, like we thought CVX had fundamental value. The future of technology is to keep other Ponzi's pinned to other Ponzi's with this Ponzi. So like, yeah, it just, I think it is different. They're right that it is different. It is different because the level of cynicism and the way people are playing the game is far different this cycle.
So I wanted to just go through kind of like my thesis around the way that I'm seeing things at the moment. And it's like my weaknesses are that I'm really bad at picking kind of like the ones that are going to run. I know that there's a strategy that you do a small bet on however many you can, and hopefully some of that sticks and you run. So I've tried that. It doesn't work for me. I'll end up always running into brick walls.
Yeah.
And then just end up being net negative and grumpy. And it's kind of like this, this like negative feedback cycle. And then I kind of like sat on my hands for a while. And then I decided that what I wanted to do was actually kind of like trade shorter time frames,
Yeah.
provided there's a decent trend, and then picking kind of like the blue chips. What are the blue chips at the moment? So we've got Whiff, we've got Pepe. I think Pepe is going to land up being, this is my number one choice. I think Pepe is
Damn,
going to be
Pepe
the
looks
one.
really good.
Really good. I mean,
As
and
long as
this
it
is
doesn't
daily.
close back below that previous high. Looks amazing.
So I think like these are the ones. I think Floki's one of the lesser spoken about, but I think Floki for me is also a possible like really strong finisher to the cycle. Like when
Yeah.
it moves better than any of the others. Like trust
Yeah,
me,
yeah.
dude. If you go and
I
study that,
agree.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's just got the right ingredients. SHIB for me hasn't really been something that I've participated in, but I think there's tremendous upside here, as you can see. I mean,
Great
there's
brand. Like
yeah,
people who don't know anything about it know about this.
yes.
Yeah.
So I think
Inter-
SHIB's one of those as well that can do super well. I haven't traded it, but I've noticed it. It's there, and I watch it, and I think it's one of those that can do really well. I mean, there's
I think
obviously
though, like
others. There's,
where you might put SHIB in a meme portfolio, I might slot Bonk instead.
yeah, I know that you love Bonk and you've traded it extensively, so you obviously know the way that it behaves. And
Bonk is
what is
less
it that?
exciting than like,
Yeah,
something lower tier. But and so is SHIB, right? But Bonk has more upside, I think. So Bonk is sort
okay,
of like the old man's meme coin of this cycle, right? Like
okay,
it had its run, it was exciting and funny for a little bit, but now it's not as funny and it's not as cool. But I still think like as the incumbent meme of this cycle, it could do really well. So I might look at Bonk in place of like SHIB for lower volatility returns on memes,
okay.
like comparatively.
Yeah, I see what you mean about upside as well, and it also looks great, doesn't it? I
Because
mean, this
SHIB's
is
like
like,
20 billion or some shit, and
yes.
Bonk is still only like 2.3 or some shit.
Well, Bonk's on deck screen, it's showing a 1.66.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, I
Mm,
think that I would rather catch Bonk from single digit billions to decabillions than catch SHIB from like
yes,
20 to 30, you know?
gotcha. Makes sense. So I mean, so it's at 14.8 at the moment, which is obviously a lot higher. It's essentially a 12x from where the 11x from where Bonk is at the moment. So your argument is sound. And then kind of like looking at the newer entrants, we've got Monk, which I think
Monkey,
is one of
MONKE.
MONK
Is
straight,
that the
not
monkey
monkey.
haircut?
Yeah, monkey haircut. It's like
Honey,
so
I mortgaged the house and I put it all on monkey haircut.
yeah. So I mean, so what I like about Monk is that I don't have a bag of this, but I like it because essentially it's got this like silliness to it, but at the same time it's only at a 22 million market cap, and I think there's tremendous upside here.
Yeah.
And I've just spoken myself into buying a bag, but I think it's got the fact that it's got the momentum. And I was looking at kind of like wallet allocation earlier on, and it actually looks really good. It's like you don't have too many pigs in this thing, consistently dumping. So quite like Monk. So this is an interesting one on Ethereum because there's not much happening on Ethereum at the moment. I think Trump is one of those that could easily go to double-digit billions, especially
100%.
for,
Yeah.
totally like in terms of getting closer to the elections and the rest of it. I
And
have jumped
shrimp
into
too.
and Trump. So I've got Trump here. I've got Trump up here as well. Same story, 92 million market cap at the moment, and I think
Oh
there's
yeah, that
huge.
thing's if I'm picking between the two, I'm going with Trimp.
Yeah, I think Trump is definitely the one that needs to be looked at the moment. Like I'm not picking up any at the moment here because I think I think it dumps quite soon, but who
Look
knows?
at that
I mean,
volume on breaking the downtrend. This is insane.
it's insane, absolutely insane.
But the one
I
thing
mean,
I've learned since we last spoke on this podcast, and I've really tried to bake it into my approach, is that I've learned that all of your favorite fundamental indicators for meme coins are gamed. They're gamed. So like you got bundler bots that devs are using to distribute the holder count artificially. Like it's all in their hands. It's in team hands and early investor hands, but it doesn't look like it when you go check out the holders because they're using bundler bots. When they launch the token, a bot is able to either snipe or take a distribution and distribute it across hundreds of wallets all at once. And it's not easy for like, you know, as someone who knows about these things can see it pretty easily, but most people who are just checking out holder counts, not looking at early dev transactions, are not going to see it. So those are gamed. The actual price action is gamed because you got market makers in majors where, like, you know, rendered probably doesn't have one market maker. Sol definitely doesn't have one market maker, right? All these market makers are not in cahoots with the team to market make. They're market making, trying to make their own profit on a spread.
yeah.
But the market makers in meme coins are hired by the team to paint charts, to create volume, to create transaction count. So if you're looking at a meme and you're saying, look at the volume, look at the transaction count, look at the holder base, all of these things were intentionally manufactured to give you the impression that this thing was going to go. And then on top of that, you have cabals, and the cabals are real. Like, for instance, Boomer is clearly the Bowden cabal, you know, doing a follow-up, doing a sequel, right? And so that's changed my approach to these things. Like I try to look less at fun. Like for instance, like I bought a bag of Boomer the second I realized it was Bowden people. It was all big Bowden holders pumping it. And I could see it because I launched a meme coin and I had to create volume to try to create attention. So I was using Jupiter DCAs to like, you know, and limit orders to like keep it in a range and create volume and create transactions and create holders. And I did all that. And I was like, okay, this at a higher scale, this is probably what meme teams are doing. Right.
Yeah.
And so I saw Boomer in that they were doing that. It was quite obvious that that was what was going on, but I picked up a bag. When it 2x, I sold half and now I'm sitting on it. Why? Not because of the holder count, not because of the volume, not because of, you know, transaction count. It's all because I know Bowden people are behind this. And if I just wait long enough, it's probably going to go. And it's an okay meme. And it certainly has done well since then. Still up over the 2x where I got back my initial. So yeah, like I definitely learning all that about, and I learned it by trying to launch a meme coin. I was like, oh, here's are the problems you face as a meme coin, you know, dev or team. And here's probably going to have to be your necessary approach to solving those problems. And that changed the game for me. So now I approach them completely differently. And I think the easiest returns or the best Sharpe ratio in meme coin land is find something that is consensus or has a big bankroll, you know, team and shillers behind it. And it's already past the major hurdles, you know, 1 million, 10 million, and those consensus bets, you know.
I want to ask you a question, and hopefully you have insight into what I consider to be the best conceived meme coin, just purely because of what their marketing team is capable of doing. And I know that you agree with me on this. And I wanted to just get your take as to, like, what is preventing ultimately this thing from like being $1 billion market cap meme, which I think we all would agree has the potential to do.
Did you see the meme coin market maker pitch deck that went around like a few months back?
I didn't see that. No.
Someone found a pitch deck from one of these lower tier market maker teams.
Yeah.
Where they talked about the different phases of chart painting that they like to do. And it's not too different from this chart, right? Initial peak, we're going to shake out people in this depression trough. We're going to moon it, redistribute, all that stuff. And
Yeah.
I'm not gonna assume that that's fake or not what's going on with most meme coins. And my assumption is that's going on with all meme coins. Is market makers are playing games with the chart, and it's completely normal for something that will be very successful or continue to be successful have these long shakeouts. And it's good to position in them. If you got a strong team, you have attention, you're above major hurdles, you're not falling back below them, you're not losing attention, then all this is just like a period of the total plan, right? But also these market makers are hired to get the team comfortable, profitable exits as well. So you got to keep that in mind, that eventually the music will stop, unless it like reaches escape velocity, like whiff. So yeah, I in terms of Stan, like what will it do? I don't know. I just know that like you do not want to buy into these run-ups. That's obvious, but like with the rationale I just explained behind it, it's even more important, right? These run-ups, they are followed by these depression troughs, always, always, always. And you have very little time to catch any upside if you're positioning like when this started taking off. You got to sell pretty aggressively and quickly. But if you can position in these depression troughs, especially scooping, like if you draw a curve below the trough and you try to scoop when it touches that curve, yeah, then you're generally pretty safe as long as you can wait. So that's what I did with Boomer. And I did it with Whiff as well. I've had a low leverage long open on Whiff on Intentex for like 3-4 weeks. I don't even look at it. Right?
Yeah.
They'll just know eventually like this thing's probably going to be like $5 or $10. So there's no point in looking at it.
Yeah, so just coming back to my thesis, like that's been pretty much my strategy, is to find those majors that, like, I believe that Pepe, and I've said it, I said this when Pepe kind of like showed its hand a while ago, and I said like this thing is like a 20, 30 plus $1 billion like thing in the making. And it's kind of like, well, I can either buy the spot, or I can just open along and just be low leverage. And I kind of treat my leverage plays, my longs, as like kind of spots as well. And that's what I've been doing. So like I've focused on those 5 that I opened up on, and it's kind of like, well, Floki, I think, has got that.
I like
Shib,
Floki. I like trading Floki big time.
Yeah, it's been very profitable for me, like short and medium term. And now I've got it on a long-term window. So I think my sentiment is the same as yours, in that I think we've reached a point now where the market's done dragging its feet and its knuckles, and it's kind of like, okay, well, let's find a bit of momentum, which I think it has. I mean, I'm just watching the tape now on Bitcoin on this top screen, and it's like it's definitely changed. There's a change. I know that sounds bizarre, but
this is great, by the way. We were kind of dumping pre-open.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
And for me, that's great. Like, good.
Yeah.
Don't pump pre-open.
Yeah, pumping pre-open generally is a bad thing. So I really like, kind of like, it's interesting because I was starting to get a little bit despondent the day before yesterday, and had like a bit of a gloomy day, like the first gloomy day probably this year, to be honest. And then all of a sudden the market showed its hand yesterday, obviously CPI coming in. And I found it quite interesting that a point.
What was the CPI print?
It was 0.1, 3.4% to the 3.5 expected. So we had a 0.1% like less on the report, and that just fucking sent the market, dude. It was just the funniest thing, So it just shows you how like temperamental markets are, that a 0.1% can actually do that. I know that there's other reasons why, which I'm quite ignorant to, but those are the indicators that we looked at, and that's what the market reacted to. So I'll just go with that for the sake of this conversation. And I think just looking at memes, I think memes are obviously super important, but I think the big question for me right now is like, do we at any point in time see, like DeFi aspects or DeFi protocols tickers actually find some momentum. I mean, obviously we've seen Pendle do super well, because they've managed to kind of like almost gather everyone around under their umbrella, and they've utilized that ability. But what else is there? Like, what are we looking at right now that could potentially be, really strong? I mean, obviously we've got AI. I'd love to get your thoughts around that.
Well, before we leave meme coins, I did want to make a mention of Abble, which is a meme about Apple stock and Apple as a company. And it's a really great meme, great design. And then the team's really good at partnerships, and they've done a lot of really cool things. That's the one, yeah. Or is that? No, that's not it. It's AABL. Yeah, that's it. So the reason that I'm scooping this is because we're about to get a huge Apple news cycle, because OpenAI just closed their deal with Apple, and they're dropping the ChatGPT app on Mac first. It won't be out on Windows till later this year. What their partnership means is that you're going to be able to use ChatGPT to do things in your Mac OS device or on the iPhone. And also Siri is now going to probably be powered by ChatGPT. So that's all coming in the news cycle. And there's going to be a lot of attention on Apple. And so I just expect this to at least be sensitive to that attention. So yeah,
it's a good call. I mean, this is, if you're going to buy it, this is where you buy it at.
exactly.
It's literally at the fucking bottom.
Yeah. And I mean, clearly it's got people behind it who know how to do something. Right. Yes. So that's one of these bets that I'm talking about, where it's like, it's passed a lot of major hurdles. It's done things in the past that indicate they know how to pump it. And it's in a depression trough, and it's not dead. And there's catalysts coming up for attention on it. So yeah, it's one of those places. And so that's a good segue into like non-meme coin land, because, I realized something the other day is that OpenAI in September of last year sought a valuation of $90 billion in a private sale. Solana is not far away from that valuation.
Yeah.
Do you think Solana should be valued as high or higher than OpenAI?
Yes, and then there was also a conversation that was had whether it should be valued the same or even higher than Ethereum, which takes it to $800.
Do you think Ethereum should be valued higher than OpenAI?
In terms of where we're going, I don't think so. No, I totally agree.
Yeah, I think that's crazy.
Yeah.
So what I realize is that, and this is not a new insight, but it's now backed and contextualized with other information, is that like everything is a meme coin. All of these things are overvalued. So the things that you apply, like when I'm applying to this meme coin, is, there's going to be attention around something that is corollary to this, and this is more sensitive than Apple stock. So I'm going to go with the more sensitive instrument. Same thing applying to serious projects, right? So AI's prevalence in the news cycle and in traditional investment world does have a correlation to more sensitive instruments in Web3. And that's how I want to start approaching fundamental token investment, right? It's like, what is the catalyst in the news cycle that's going to make this thing react? And so by that respect, I've in working with AI, I've realized that like there is absolutely zero serious AI developers who are sitting around wishing that they had more blockchain in their stack. It's hard enough to develop applications of AI before introducing like blockchain. So that allows me to treat all AI projects in Web3 as meme coins, instead of worrying about, is this good application of AI? None of them are very good applications of AI. So we can level that out and just talk about other metrics for investment. That's my opinion, not the opinion of Blockmates, not the opinion of, Jedi necessarily. So take it with a grain of salt. But yeah, that's my opinion. So now I can look at like, okay, what is still going to react to AI being dominant in the news cycle for this reason or that, but is still low enough that it has a lot more upside. And so, yeah, that's kind of how I've been approaching the more fundamental things. And then you have stuff you have outside news cycle impacting Web3 projects. You also have in Web3 news cycle impacting Web3 projects. And that's why I'm still holding on to Pika, despite being down bad, like 60% on a big old bag. Because I think that EigenLayer is going to get a news cycle for crypto natives, and that's going to pump Pika, because Pika is now Ethereum IBC, Solana IBC. It's shipped, it's happening. And all it's going to take is a season where EigenLayer is going off, AVSs are going off, and we get a true like late 2021 type or back half of 2021 type run where like you need to move shit around chains constantly. Cosmos is doing things, L2s are doing things, and stuff that allows you to play DeFi gets a run.
So you reckon that we will see kind of like a DeFi run this cycle, as opposed to it being forgotten like it has been pretty much for a better part of what we've seen this cycle?
Yeah. You had DeFi summer, which was early cycle.
Yeah.
Some might even say pre-cycle.
Yes.
And then you had DeFi 2.0, which was late cycle. One of the four horsemen of the apocalypse is DeFi 2.0.
Yeah.
I think we didn't really have DeFi summer. It was more like meme coin summer, but I think we will have that corollary DeFi 2.0 moment. And probably Tapioca launch has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, obviously we've chatted a lot about Tap, and obviously people have kind of like almost in a way turned it into a bit of a meme because they've taken so long to get to where they need to get to. And I think people need to also understand that they're building something that really does change things, and like a lot. Like it's a literal game changer, and with that comes the importance of security and the rest of it. And I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say that, well, I think they've fixed everything. I am apprehensive, and I am somewhat anxious that there might still be issues, because it is such a big protocol.
Yeah.
But I actually would much rather they took longer to launch this thing than, put it out there just for the sake of putting it out there and kind of like do a dick swinging exercise.
Yeah.
If they find something else, I'd much rather it took them another 6 months. I actually don't care, and it's like, if that's what's needed, then so be it. I agree with you. I think Layer 0 is going to be a huge one. You can see I follow Brian quite closely. I've spoken to him quite a bit, and you can see like there's a lot of calculated strategy. There's a lot of thinking that's going into what it is that they're doing. And I just don't see them dropping the ball. I think Layer 0 is going to be an absolute monster. And that, once again, is also a game changer to the extent that people don't actually realize how much they change. They will end up changing things. I'm not such a big fan of Stargate, but at the end of the day, I've always seen Stargate as being more like an alpha version of what Layer 0 is capable of. And if you play with Tapioca in its current beta state, you get a real understanding of how effective Layer 0 is. Bridges, wormhole, all of that shit, dude, is kind of like, it's the horse cart versus the fucking Ferrari. That's the way that I view it.
Yeah, I think that Layer 0 is super cool. And I think that Tap, what it's going to enable, if you remember last cycle, it's only obvious in retrospect, but like how much of the late cycle shenanigans was entirely because it was so easy to collateralize majors at high valuations and move that capital around different chains because of Abracadabra. Like I would imagine that you get a 50 or more % reduction in how crazy late cycle was if you can't just instantly get MIM and move it anywhere and play stuff. And I think Tap's going to enable the same thing. It's the ability to take yielding positions in majors, collateralize it, take those stables and transport them to any chain. So if I want to collateralize like some kind of yielding staked Ethereum or restaked Ethereum position, I can do that on mainnet. I can do that on Arbitrum, and then move that capital over to Solana, or over to Optimism or Mantle or wherever, Yeah. So that type of fluidity is, I think it's a major enabler for late cycle shenanigans, which is why I'm kind of looking at Tap launch as a catalyst to the four horsemen of the apocalypse.
I think I really like that kind of like, first of all, the insight into Abracadabra. Like for a lot of the first time cycle participants, Abracadabra was a literal game changer in that
it was kids' night out. It was like, holy shit, this is so fun.
I've got $100 that I can turn into $400. Like literally, you would have.
For me, it was like, for me, it was like, holy shit, I have all this Bitcoin and Ethereum because I knew like nothing about deeper Web3. And I can just fucking go play deeper Web3 and not have to sell that.
Yeah.
And it was huge. Like I would build up a stack of Ethereum on Arbitrum and then take MIM, shuttle it over to AVAX, play Wonderland, play Ohm 990ing and shit like that.
Popsicle finance on Ethereum, like go and fucking buy a bag of popsicle finance.
Yeah.
And then MIM off ETH and then move that into Phantom, do the same thing.
And then as you're on your smaller plays, as you're making profit, like every Wonderland rebase, I'm paying down some loans here now, or I think AVAX is about to have a run. Let's take that ETH stack and make it an AVAX stack on Avalanche. And it was all powered by Abracadabra. Yeah. It was the main reason why I was able to do that. And without Abracadabra, I would have had to probably play one chain at a time. Correct. I would have probably had to sell some majors. So it really enabled late cycle craziness. And I think that's what's required. Abracadabra still exists. You can still do all this stuff. Yeah. But I think people have forgotten, and we just need some new, we just need some new blood in that world. But I do think that, like, remember that, like, when that moment's happening, when you're shuttling like collateralized debt position stables around different chains and playing all these hyper Ponzi moves, you are dancing in the fire of Armageddon, and you have to know that. And that's why I have this sweatshirt to remind me at all times.
So I think you know what's really interesting about this, because it comes back to like one of my main kind of like jokes, and it's also a major thesis, is like why is it now about meme coins and governance tokens have gone out the window? And it's like, well, it's really simple. Governance tokens have become way too inflationary. They became kind of like, well, what the fuck's the point? And we're now being honest about it, and we're actually like investing in meme coins, which are effectively governance tokens without the lies and the bullshit. And what I think Tapioca is going to land up doing right now from a tokenomics perspective, and it's actually really worth going and studying this for anyone who is curious about tokenomics, is like, look at what Tapioca is doing from a tokenomics perspective and how they're approaching tokenomics, in that it's going to be completely deflationary, and there won't be any essentially excess tokens in circulation, because anything that's excess lands up getting bought out by the treasury, to the extent that I think the life cycle of emissions, in inverted commas once again, that might be exhibited or that will be exhibited by Tapioca or Tap tokens, is I think a 10.5-year lifespan that they're looking at. And that's from the emission side of it, as opposed to what they buy from the treasury side of things, which they can then also give out later on. And then there's obviously the option side to their tokenomics, which I know there's a lot there to process, but essentially what it is, TLDR, is that we will not allow our token to be used in the same way as other governance tokens have in the past. And we've now come up with an idea which we think will change that. So let's see if they're right. That's the theory. Let's see what it does in the wild. And I think if they get it right, it's going to change, I think, pretty much the way that tokenomics are looked at. I think IntentX launched their tokenomics this morning, in fact. Very bullish IntentX. Blockmates has invested in IntentX on a seed round level. We did, and we love what they're doing. But if you look at what Levi's doing as the CEO and the way that they're approaching things, is they are so fucking aware of like this whole idea about what tokenomics should look like. And once again, they're taking their tokenomics, they're looking at incentivizing, and 85% of all fees on that, on a perp stakes, will go back to stakers. And if you land up unstaking before time periods, they essentially take away everything from you. And it's kind of like, we'll give you a revenue generating like opportunity, but don't fuck it up, because if you do, we're going to take it away from you. And I love that. It's kind of like you either in or you're out, decide.
Yeah. I was thinking yesterday, because I'm building an AI application that vaguely has to do with Web3, or it's going to be used for Web3. And I was thinking about different features it could have that would produce revenues.
Yeah.
And then I thought about like, should I make this an actual project and like seek investment? And I was thinking about, because I have a company that's an S corp and it has equity and it has multiple shareholders. And so through that lens, right, if my company as an S corp makes a bunch of net gains and I want to distribute some of those profits to myself, I also have to distribute an equivalent portion to all the other shareholders, which means revenues for the company don't benefit me until they benefit all shareholders.
Yeah.
And when you have governance tokens behaving like that, like for instance, Bonk, right? BonkBot prints money, but there's no obvious way for me to get that money as a Bonk holder, right? But if it were the case that as a Bonk holder, and not even a staker necessarily, just I have it, right? If I was distributed a equivalent portion of the revenues that is generated by the protocol, then it would just be it would make a lot more sense to hold this token, right? And it would be easier to figure out which tokens to buy, because I'd be looking for those that have incredible revenues, and those revenues are resistant against cycles to some degree. So I do think that governance tokens need to head there. They need to head towards, because right now, like, a governance token can be for a protocol that's not at all profitable. It doesn't print revenues, and it can still be the best performer. And that really shouldn't happen. Like that's a distortion of marketplace dynamics. So I think we need to head there, but there's all this, it's going to take regulatory clarity to be able to head there.
I think right now, if you are just around the regulation aspect of things, I think living in the US and being involved in crypto it's really risky. I mean, I know that kind of like almost joked about it, but it's like it's a risky thing, because I think there's a lot of kind of like individuals within the current administration, maybe even in other administrations, that don't like crypto. They obviously, have their own interests, whether it's bank related, I don't know. But the point is that it's quite a risky thing. And you're right. I think it's a handbrake to a lot of the development that needs to happen. And I think once those get addressed, and hopefully they do get addressed in the short term as opposed to the long term, Americans have a huge role to play, not only as the biggest economy, but I think I'm in the space. I speak to founders all the time, and there's a shitload of really bright and insanely gifted fucking founders that are Americans. And they're trying to make this thing work. And it's kind of like, we need those people in the space. We can make fun about the burgers and we can kind of like joke about it and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, it's fucking serious. Like privacy is a serious thing. Development and founders that are doing good shit in the space are really important. But just quickly, just to come back to the whole idea of protocols and projects, these need to be businesses. We need to actually stop talking about projects and protocols. Like you said, like I've got a company, I'm obligated to pay my shareholders back. And the same thing applies. And we've got to stop talking about protocols. We've got to talk about these things as businesses. Aave, in my opinion, is a fucking business. These guys make proper money. You know, that is a business.
But the
In my
governance
eyes,
tokens right now, they give you power to influence how the business operates.
correct.
And to be honest, like in my company, it would be bad if minority shareholders had some kind of say in how the business operates. And like, you know, most protocols aren't like that because like, you know, there is a key decision maker who holds most of that voting, you know, token, and they're going to be able to override stuff. And that's important. But it's just to say that like my shareholders are not, you know, staying in their shares because they can make a meaningless vote on what my company does next that I can override at any time. That's not why they're there, right? They're there because they have a legally guaranteed right to distributed profits. If I distribute myself $1, they have to get, you know, an equivalent portion based on how much shares they hold. And that is such an important like sanity check, right? It's like everything will operate weird until this operates normal. Everything's going to be very weird and distorted until this is not, you know? So I think that's very important. And Aave is a great example because, and CVX and Yearn and all these like early governance tokens, because they introduced the model of like, oh, you can vote on the gauges or how much, you know, emissions go to this or that pool. And like, that's all very indirect ways of benefiting myself. Make it simple. Give me profits you generate with your friggin' app, dude.
So 100%. I mean, it's kind of like we looking at like the big picture of things, you know. And obviously, like on Shitcoin Church, I think we've obviously gone through quite a few kind of like, I don't know, stuff that you can potentially bet on and the rest of it. But I think right now, I just want to get back into, you know, like where we are from kind of like the sentiment that we saw, you know, from OGs, like saying, okay, well, top's in and it's all over. And I'm just curious as to like, what do you think plays out now? I mean, you've obviously touched on it, but like, what is your kind of like thesis going forward? You know, comparing to other cycles and the rest of it. Are we in a different space right now, or do you see a similar kind of thing playing out going
I've seen
forward?
people who are multi-cycle participants talk about how it was very similar in 2020 before we cleared all-time highs. There was a consolidation, people said it might be over, and then we went on the real run. I think that there's a nice mix. I think there's tons of like I was in Pika Discord and I just mentioned like someone was talking about like where in the cycle are we? And at the time, which was like 3 or 4 months ago, I said like I think we're like early second quarter. And this guy thinks we're in the second. We haven't even started yet. And it's like, okay, well now where we are now today, I think we're past the halfway point. And I think people forget how, if you're talking about just time spent with upside left, look at when we broke all-time highs in 2020 and how long it took for us to get to pretty much the top. There was another run up and we made a little bit higher high, but the upside was over unless you sold then, picked up again in the bottom of that May correction and then wrote it back up to like 69. If you didn't do that, like you could have just sold in early 2021 and like you captured the upside, right?
Yeah.
And so I think people underestimate the potential of us to have another run that's kind of bigger than this run. I think people overestimate how long we'll have. I think people overestimate where we are in the cycle because once we are past all-time highs, really, and if we go on this huge run, I think really you got BTC maybe a month, 2 months before it's at near where it's going to top out at. And then you get a distributive pattern on BTC. Alts are going to have a lot of upside from there. but then you're either going to get a bear market or you're going to get a major correction, and then like an inability to make significant new highs. It's, you know, same thing as last cycle. So I think, yeah, I think both OGs and new cycle participants, or people who are more optimistic, aren't calculating that, like, you know, OGs could be kind of right. Like, it is kind of over in the sense that, like, we're very close to the end compared to where we were a year ago.
Yeah.
But they can be wrong about, like, there isn't a lot of upside to capture.
But a year ago, it was all about Bitcoin. It was not about anything else. And do we then take on the assumption that everything else will kind of like just be in the shade, and we'll never
I don't think it
see?
was all. I think that's I don't agree with that. It was, I don't know a single person in the discords we hang out with who is like, oh my God, all I can think about is Bitcoin. They were
No,
all
but this
like,
is the point. Exactly the point that I'm making is that we haven't seen. I mean, there've been one or two, which I can't remember, but we haven't seen like proper parabolic blow of tops. We haven't seen any of that, like as a general rule. Have we?
I mean, if Solana didn't make a new high, it would look like a blow off top. 205 would. If and I mean, keep in mind, the higher up in market cap a coin gets, just based off of historical evidence, the less likely it is to have a blow off top and more likely to have a distributive top, like Bitcoin and Ethereum last cycle. So Solana could very well have a distributive top, but like things like, you know, Render has had multiple blow off moments where, like, if it never went back up, it would have looked like a blow off top. You know, every AI coin, memes, Bonk has had 2 blow off tops already, right? Floki had one, you know, so like memes and a lot of the newer governance tokens that people are excited about, they've all had what you might call a blow off top in hindsight if it just continued to go down from here. But I don't think it's over for them. I think they're going to eclipse what they did early cycle, probably around after Bitcoin tops out.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone will agree on. It's kind of like you need almost like the precursor, which is Bitcoin hitting its top. I mean, a lot of people are saying that it's already done that at 73.5. But then we wouldn't be seeing what we're seeing right now, would we? Kind of like this accelerated, like, revisit into 65, 66.
Let me pull it up, dude. Let's just zoom out, go to the weekly. Go to the weekly on Bitcoin, pull it up.
You sharing it?
Oh, hold on, I'll share it. Present, share screen. Okay. All right. So you see this, or
Yes.
even all this, but especially this.
Yeah.
Now look at this.
It's very similar, yeah.
Very similar.
Mm.
And I'm not at all a fractal guy. So, like, all I mean to say is that, like, if we had a multi-week downtrend before a major move, it wouldn't be weird. It would not be weird. Here's more.
Yeah.
Here's more.
Yeah,
Here's more.
there's tons of them.
More.
Yeah, there's tons
Yeah.
of them. Yeah,
Here's more. So yeah, like it just wouldn't be weird. And this doesn't look like a top, dude. It really doesn't. Like, there's no top in the history of this chart that looks like that. It just it looks so much more like this and this and fucking this and this. It looks like that. So yeah, I don't know, dude. I don't really sympathize with the idea that it's like over.
Yeah, I think, and Luke hits the nail on the head here. I think kind of like at the end of the day, the grease that turns the wheels is the liquidity, and the liquidity definitely has not left the fucking room. It's still
No,
very much present.
no. There's two things. I've tried to stop myself short of talking about macro because I'm an idiot and I don't know anything about macro. But I do think it's easier to say anything than saying anything definitive about macro liquidity cycles. I think it's easier to say that, like, okay, where are we in terms of the Fed and liquidity? We're at a point where our debt service is astronomically high. CPI is coming down, not as aggressively as the Fed would like. So there's two really things that can play out. Either we pull back on the tightening, which just will increase liquidity. It just will, right? If we stop quantitative tightening, we're already still increasing liquidity through fiscal, right? So we're also government spending. The government still has an unlimited budget, and that equates to money printing because they go take that money and they spend it on, they give it to people for services and to do things. And those people now have more money. So that is stimulative. But if we stop, if the Fed stops quantitative tightening as much, or they do a rate cut, that's just going to net increase liquidity. Or we could have a recession and they need to do that. Or we could get so high on the debt service that we need to aggressively reduce rates to be able to continue paying our debts. But like all the outcomes lead to more global liquidity in my mind. So I don't know how it gets there. There's no path dependence to this idea. It's just like probably global liquidity increases before it decreases again.
I
I
mean,
think
an
that's a safe
SPX.
assumption.
Yeah, I think it is a safe assumption, and not sure whether this is relevant or not. But SPX hit all-time high yesterday, just before close. You know, it's like
Really?
sitting at 5,308. Dude, it's like
dude, I saw someone catch a short right here, and their
really,
target was like here. And they were
wow.
like, this is a multi-year trade. And now here we
Yeah,
are back above all-time high. That's so funny, dude.
yeah, dude. I mean, it's just like, yeah, I know. It's just it's amazing what that side of the market's doing. I mean, Nvidia is absolutely printing. I think Nvidia is just going
Oh
to
my
keep going.
God, dude.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, you know, obviously this is Shitcoin Church, but anything happens and goes. So
Dow Jones
yeah,
too,
I
dude.
mean,
Yeah.
dude,
Yeah, dude. I don't know. It's very hard for me to ever like just these people who make these bearish calls like this early, just they always look so silly, very quickly. And
I think
it's not people who are idiots. These are people
no,
who are like really smart, and it
mm,
still happens to them. And so
yeah,
I think like you're generally safer if it's hard to gauge when things are crazy enough for a top to happen.
yeah.
It's easier to do it with time than it is to do it with like, what does it feel like? But like, it just seems early to be making these calls. Everyone wants to be the smart guy who's like, I think this is a top, even though other people don't. But it's like, man, it's just too early for all that. I think like,
Yeah, I
I don't
think one of the big kind of like variables in this is like, what is your emotional disposition? And obviously the best traders are the ones that can divorce themselves from those emotional kind of like roller coaster rides that you take yourself on. And everyone's guilty. It doesn't matter how good you are at that, managing your emotions. But I think the biggest emotional driver is being sidelined or getting things repeatedly wrong. And then as soon as you do that, then you start making like the silly calls. And I think a lot of like my mistakes, and from my own experience, I can't speak for anybody else, but I think my mistakes always take me down the worst case scenario. Like when I start making mistakes, and it's like it's easy to be bearish, it's easy to make the bad decisions. I know that's obvious, but a lot of people aren't aware of it when they're doing it, right? It's like, well, you're making that call because you've been sidelined or you've made some bad decisions, as opposed to, I have a clear idea as to what's going on here. This is the data that I'm using, and this is the thesis that I'm drawing from that data, as opposed to just pure emotion.
I think like thanks to this AI project I'm working on, I've been able to just say, like, my approach to the market right now is I've got some coins that probably have upside. We're probably not at the end yet. And
Yeah.
whatever they do in the next, like, day or week, I really don't care.
Mm.
And I'm not even really paying attention. And it's like, I think that people underestimate the value of not being locked in, of being locked
Yes,
out. It has value. And I'm not just
it
saying like,
does.
oh, position yourself in big, boring majors and then just wait till the top. Cause that's like the conventional advice and you're better off not trading and all that. I'm not saying all that. Like, find good projects, find stuff at very low market caps and position, like do all that, but just try to be day to day as checked out as you can be. Cause I think it's
Mm.
only going to benefit you.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for not being in any trades, like at certain periods of time, and I'm talking about the short term stuff. Whether you're trading leverage or whether you're looking to swing something over a short period of time. Sometimes it's really cool to like go away and just not do anything. Like for me, that was super cool to step away from everything for like 9 days and be
Yeah.
completely offline and just not think about it. And the value in that is huge. And I totally encourage and support anyone who steps away and says, okay, I'm done. I mean, I know Grant's about to do that now for 2 weeks, and I know that he hasn't done it for probably 4 years now. And he's going to do it for 2 weeks where he's like literally going to like disconnect. I don't know if he's going to get it right. I hope he does. I mean, that's why he's not on today. But I think catching him after that 2 weeks and getting him on church and getting his perspective is probably going to be one of the most valuable moments that any viewer of this show will get, in my opinion. I'm predicting because of that break.
Yeah. Yeah. And like taking a break, like taking a break is a forceful way to get yourself locked out.
Yes.
But I can't tell you how beneficial it can be to find a way to be locked out, even if you're still at your computer every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's like real power. That's like, wow, I'm immune to the swings here. To give you an example, I'm probably down like 10% in UPNL on a whiff low lev perp long.
Yes.
And it's like 3x. And I've paid out probably 0.5% in funding. I've had it open for
Yeah.
weeks,
Yeah.
but I don't check it. And every once in a while I glance at whiff, not at the chart, but just at the chart label where it's like, what's the current price? That's it.
Yes. Yeah.
And I don't
That's
care
cool, isn't
'cause
it? Yeah.
it's great. Like,
Yeah.
so yeah, like that. I love it. And I truly enjoy it more than being locked in.
So I've had the same with Popcat. I've had the same with Popcat from like 22 cents. And also similar scenario. It's not a massive position, but it's big enough. And I was away in the desert and I had the long open, and it was like I don't give a shit. Well, because I can't get liquidated. That's the way I play it.
Yeah.
And it was cool, dude. It was super cool. Like I really enjoyed that. Like
Yeah.
just
And people, or it took me a second to really wrap my head around this, but like, okay, if you open a low lev long, right? And you don't use all of your margin in such a way that you can't get liquidated, there's enough margin in your account and it's cross margin. So even if it
yes,
went to like 0, you'd be fine.
yes,
Um, what that unlocks is not that because people are like, well, isn't that the same as like doing a 1x or less long? Because it's like, yeah, it is until it starts going up.
yeah,
And then you have all this margin and it's in an
yeah,
uptrend. And so now you
yeah.
can go place more bets.
Mm,
Um, so yeah, I value that. I value like, let's snipe some obvious ones at
yes,
lows, set it up so we can't be liquidated. And then when it starts uptrending, now we have all this available capital to go do other things.
yeah.
So yeah.
On that note, we're at the top of the hour. I'd like to think that we spoke more about relevant stuff outside of shitcoins, and I think we spoke a bit about shitcoins as well. And
Mhm.
yeah, it was cool. Cool to kind of like explore the different layers that we are playing with at the moment. And thank you, sir, for your time.
It's a pleasure, dude. It's an absolute pleasure every time.
And I'm glad that I managed to get you online away from the slice of toast, because people were wondering whether you were in fact a real person. And yes, there he is. Thanks, dude. Appreciate it. Appreciate your time.
Yeah.
Look forward to seeing your AI working in Discord. We won't give away anything beyond that, but it might be something that the laughs can enjoy initially.
Yeah.
Look forward to that.
Hell yeah.
To all the DJs that are watching, please like and subscribe. We appreciate it.
If you're not in the Blockmates Discord, join. I'm in the pit a lot of the times.
Yeah, we've got the pit. The pit moved from the Hero Network Discord. They've joined us. It's carnage. There's way too much alpha for most people to process, but give it time. Come join us. On that note, thank you for listening. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys on the flip side next week. Cheers.
Peace out, yo.